Welcome, everybody, to our Friday Career Connections. My name's Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad Online. We're excited to have you here today. Our guest is Michael Anderson from Chicago History Museum, and Michael's probably going to be one of the most interesting people. If you haven't met Michael, he'll be one of the more interesting people you'll ever meet. So before we start, we just want to get a pulse on where everyone's from. And what's your connection to SUU? So tell us the city and the state where you're located and what's your connection to SUU? Are you a student? Are you an alum? Are you an employee? Are you a friend? Are you just an interested person? So if you'll throw that in the chat. Um, while you're doing that, Pam is saying she's got some problems with the sound. Oh, it's fixed. Okay, good. All right. Throw in the chat which city state you're in and what's your connection with SUU. We've got an employee and an alum, AA student. You got to tell us where you're living, where you're currently located. Oh, living in Utah. You got to be more specific than just Utah. You got to give us a city. Houston, Texas. Awesome. Richard, you're in LA, right? Saratoga Springs, MSBA, employee and returning. Awesome. West Covina, California, Cedar City. Someone that's doing an MPA degree. That's perfect for our topic today. Richard Hernandez in Inglewood. He's the bonsai master. I want to have your dad on this program one day. That's a cool thing. Uh, we have people in Caibeto, Arizona. I don't know where Caibeto is. Cassia, hopefully I'm saying your name right. Tell us where Caibeto is. Granville, Ohio, Arts Administration program. Perfect. This will be spot on. Okay. Keep those coming in. I appreciate near Page, Arizona. Okay, great. Well, our guest today is someone I've known for a long time. Like I said, we went to high school together and then college, and then our paths kind of diverged, and now we're back together again. But Michael is someone that is creative, um, driven, and has great leadership experience, and as a devoted SUU alum that's done some really great things in his career. So we'd just like to turn the time over to you. Our theme today is the arts and arts administration and nonprofit work. So that's where the focus is. And so Michael would like to turn the time over to you to share your career story, and then we'll dig deeper into some other topics.
Great. Thanks, Tad. And hello, everyone. It's nice to be on this call with you today, and I hope I'll be able to share some things to make you think. Tad and I, yeah, way back, and just have really enjoyed my growing up in Cedar City, going to SUU, which really I think set a solid foundation for the rest of my life. I'll just give you a little bit of overview of where I'm at, or what I've done, and maybe some things I've learned. But I'd really like to leave the time for questions and to hear from all of you and answer questions. But I think for me, SUU was the place where I really discovered my confidence, right? And SUU is a unique opportunity where you can kind of explore. I did a little bit of everything. I was in the communications and marketing department, but I spent a lot of time doing plays. I danced. I was involved with student government, just anything that I kind of wanted to explore, and I could do it at SUU. And so I took risks. I imagined possibilities I hadn't even seen for myself. And I think that really helped open doors for me later, because I had that confidence. Like if I want to do it, I can just do it and try it and make it work. So after SUU, I went to graduate school at Wayne State University in arts administration. At that time, they were one of the only universities in the country that was offering a terminal degree in arts administration, and they actually ran a professional theater company there on campus. And so studying arts management gave me the vocabulary that kind of helped me bring together the passions that I had around the arts but also the information that I needed to be a good administrator. And through graduate school, I kind of blossomed a little more and really wanted to be a performer and be a dancer. I had I danced when I was younger. I did it when I was at SUU, but it always was kind of a hobby. And I really kind of doubled down and focused a lot more. It was my counter to all of the studies in graduate school, and I would take a dance class after school, and just kind of got that passion. So when I graduated from Wayne State, I moved to New York City. I had a scholarship at the prestigious Joffrey Ballet School as a trainee, and wanted to move to New York. So, and actually, there was an alum of SUU that was living in New York that was also a professional dancer who kind of reached out his hand and pulled me to New York and helped get me grounded in New York City. So then, kind of long story short, I spent a year in the trainee program, got to perform with the company, then got in the company and spent another 3 years in the Joffrey in New York before the company moved to Chicago in 1995. I spent another 10 years dancing with the company. And it was a really unique time to be part of the company because I saw the kind of the ending of the Joffrey in New York and their reinvention and rising from the ashes in Chicago. And of course, I was a dancer and a performer at that time, but I also had a degree in arts administration. And so I could kind of see that transition through the lens of an arts administrator and saw some of the things that they did well and some of the things that they didn't do so well. But those years at the Joffrey and dancing on stage taught me discipline, rigor, collaboration, and how to perform under pressure, right? All of those experiences were very formative in every way as I looked at to what my career would be after I was through dancing. And after 10 years of dancing in the company, I was turning 40, and I was like, I need to do something else, or I'm going to get, stuck and won't be able to enter another career. So I had been in Chicago for 20 years, no, 10 years at that time, had an opportunity to go to Columbia College, Chicago, which is an arts uh, university, about 12,000 students, very focused in arts and culture, at a great film school. And I started out doing events and running programs for Columbia in their fundraising office. Again, using skills that I had learned as a performer. Putting on an event was very similar to doing a performance, right? Getting ready for a performance, checking all those boxes. And then just kind of moved up in the development from events into annual giving, into major gifts. I even came back to SUU as a fundraiser in 27 or oh 07, oh 08. It was the Future is Rising campaign when they built the Shakespeare, just before they built the Shakespeare theater, the Beverly Sorensen Performing Arts Center. We were working on all of that at that time. 2008 was the crash, the market crash, so things slowed down a little bit. And I did move back to Chicago, but I was glad to see that the Beverly Sorensen Center and the new Shakespeare Theater actually did end up happening, even though I wasn't there. So and then it brought me back, and I came to the Chicago History Museum, ran a $50 million campaign for them. Started out as a major gift officer, moved to the director of the development department, to the VP, and I'm now in the interim role of president and CEO at the Chicago History Museum. So just kind of, continuing to do my work, showing up, being the best that I can be, and knowing that I had the skills, which I think this kind of leads me to kind of the three things that I would kind of my recommendations. But Ted, do you want me to do you want me to give the lessons learned now or later?
Yeah, why don't we go? Yeah, go ahead. Let's share them and we'll use that as a foundation for some questions. If you do have questions for Michael, please put those in the chat. We'll keep talking and we'll be reading those questions. So we'll go ahead and I would love to hear those three, three pieces of wisdom that you'd like to share as you reflect
Yeah,
on your career.
sure, sure. So I think first for me was that reinvention isn't a detour, it's actually a skill. So moving from a dancer to to an arts executive or arts administration doesn't look it's very unconventional on paper, right? But I think the discipline of being in the studio, being a dancer, and then the patience of fundraising come all from the same well. You have to show up, hone the fundamentals, and trust the process. And if you do that, you won't be worried about the idea of reinvention, right? I started out wanting to be a marketer in communications, and I ended up, in doing a completely different career path. But those things that I learned along the way helped me to reinvent and reimagine who I could be. Second, I think that relationships are real currency. So, especially as a fundraiser, every campaign that I've led, every fundraising initiative that I've led, every board that I've served on, it has all really come back to trust. And those people that I have worked with, I've learned that people give to people that they trust. They might love the institution, but they really, at the end of the day, people give to people, and the trust is earned through listening, persistence, humility, consistency, all those kinds of traits. So building relationships, at least in my field, have always been very, very helpful. And then I think the third is leadership often finds you when you're focused on service, not a title. I never set out to be a CEO. I set out to be useful to donors, to teams, to the institutions that I worked for and believed in. So the titles followed when service was steady and visible, and I was there to serve the organization that I worked for.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of leadership, we just had a question come in from Pam. She wants to know what can we do to further our leadership skills and would there be any organizations or kinds of organizations that we should become a part of to develop hands-on experience in the leadership realm?
Yeah, so I think, yes, there's a lot of different things that you can in organizations and things that you can learn leadership skills and I've taken several courses and things to just kind of brush up. I think there's a lot more tools now out there online and things that you can do. But I think that leadership is learned by putting yourself forward as well. And it's a lot of trial and error, and there will be failures along the way. But I think the most effective things that I've learned as far as leadership is just being present, being out there, taking volunteer roles, running a committee or volunteering to be on a board and giving of your time and talents. And then you kind of learn how you can be a great leader. There's a lot of books and things like that too. But for me, it was really, I mean, I had a strong foundation. I know you've got to respect other people, meet people where they're at, know how to listen really well, and then be able to kind of hone that into showing up and kind of leading. Leading to me is facilitating everybody else's conversations and kind of leading the charge. It's not about saying, I think you should do this, I think you should do this. It's a collection of ideas from the people that you serve.
Yeah, I like that. And Jonathan just made a comment. He said the measure of a leader is not the measure of a task completed, it's the measure of the team being led. So that's really helpful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we've all been in those situations where we're in a team meeting and our boss comes in and said, okay, we have this opportunity for an extra project or whatever, and then there's crickets, right? And everyone's thinking, oh, I'm so busy. And it's those that step out of their comfort zone and say, I'll volunteer for that, that really set themselves up for leadership skills. Talk,
Right, Ted. I agree. I think volunteer, like saying, raising the hand, and sometimes it may be overwhelming or like I'm not sure I can do that. But I think in those opportunities you can learn so much, and it's usually a pretty self or safe way to raise your hand because whoever it is that's asking you to do that doesn't want you to fail either. So if you are open to it, they will help you succeed and help you reach your goal, and you
yeah.
learn a lot through that process.
I think you also send a message, right, to your boss that I'm willing to do some extra work. I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone. And that does send a message for future opportunities. Like you said, maybe not looking for the next promotion blatantly, but it does send a message to those around you. So I like that. I mean, you're obviously a gifted, I mean, from high school, you're a gifted performer. You've had confidence as long as I've known you. Anybody who can get out on the stage and perform like you do obviously has confidence, and there's some innate talent there. I mean, I would never be, I could never dance. I mean, I'm just too clumsy. But you've taken that talent, but you've also complemented it with education. Talk to us about the role of that education plays in a nonprofit or in an arts world. How important were those degrees from Wayne State and from Columbia College to your development, but also to your career progression?
I I think that the education gives you the skills that you may not have, and we're always learning, right? New skills. And at least for me as a dancer, I knew that I needed to have other skills in order to be successful, right? There's a lot of kind of transferable skills that you learn, like showing up to class every day, collaborating with fellow dancers, learning new choreography, um, the rigor of it all, the physical rigor, but then then going to school and learning how, oh, that's similar to what I was doing as a professional dancer. For me, I had already kind of gone to school, so as I was dancing, it was easier for me to kind of draw those parallels. But I've learned so much, through my education, um, that have really helped whatever direction I've gone. I don't know, I can't think of any specifics right offhand, but um, just, well, for example, like writing, I'm thinking now some of my biggest challenges when I was at SUU and kind of the marketing was to write creatively and uh, being able to put pen to paper, which was not really a strong skill of mine. And I learned how to do that more effectively. Um, I still, it's interesting you say, Tad, that I always seemed, to be a performer or fearless. It still makes me nervous today, right? Even preparing for this, like, because I'm so, and probably a personality or perfectionist in that way. I always wanted to do my best, but I always still get nervous about, getting out on stage or giving a speech or a talk or with people because I want to do my very best. So those kinds of things I think have helped push me also to do better or be more prepared. But I don't know if we all have our own anxieties.
Yeah. Well, you're great at faking it. So,
Thanks.
um, I don't want to get too political here, but I do want to talk about trends you're seeing in the nonprofit space and the arts. I know, like NPR, for example, their funding has been cut. I mean, that we've had all the controversy at the Kennedy Center and where that's going.
Yeah.
What are you seeing happening now in the nonprofit, the arts space with the government budget cuts? How is that impacting? And how should folks that are just starting their career interpret that, or what's the word? I don't want, how should they prepare for those kinds of volatile environments where we may not know if the funding's going to be there for certain organizations to continue? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought the Kennedy Center would be in a situation that it's in now? So,
Right. Right. Well, I think that that's a really, it doesn't even have to always be government. I think just being a nonprofit, Tad, it's always going to be vulnerable because in this country, a nonprofit, unlike Europe, where a lot of these, especially arts and culture, is supported by the government. In this country, it's set up as nonprofits, and we kind of we exist because of philanthropy and donors. And sometimes those donors are the government, sometimes they're corporations, but most of the time it's individuals. And so, yes, the current climate and kind of some of the changes in the government have put a huge strain on a lot of nonprofits. But there's also corporations that are pulling back. There's individuals that will pull back based on the economy, right? Depending on whether their investments or whether their personal wealth they're worried about. So I think it's in nonprofits, we always have to be really creative about where we find our funding sources. But the most important thing I think for nonprofits is to live within your means, have a good solid budget. Um, I think also be mission driven. I think a lot of times nonprofits will maybe extend themselves too much, chasing a grant for a special project or educational programs. And what comes with that is money, but it also comes, you need the infrastructure in order to fulfill those project and funding sources. And sometimes it stretches an organization too thin. So a nonprofit has to have good, solid fundraising base, which is usually individuals. I would say 80% of our funding at the Chicago History Museum for general operating comes from individuals. And that's based on relationships. And that sometimes is years of building relationships. I I am seeing that and I think that that's one of the reasons why I was tapped to be the interim CEO at the Chicago History Museum, is that I have the relationship with the funders. And what nonprofits need right now more than anything is funding to keep going. Most every nonprofit that I know of, whether it's arts and culture or health and wellness or food insecurity, they're all challenged right now with operating in deficit. So figuring out how we can, and that's partly from COVID and just kind of rebounding after COVID, especially in the arts and culture sector, because it relied on people coming to buy tickets and either admissions at museums or tickets for performances. And those crowds have not fully come back. So it's just about being creative. In Chicago, we have a strong, I think, especially at the museum, which is we're now in our 170th year of operation. Um, we have a good base of people that really believe in our mission and the importance of the Chicago History Museum. Um, and with these government cuts, so I think that's where I'm going with this, is that we have lost about $500,000 worth of funding, but our individual donors have stepped up to kind of bridge that gap. And I think we're lucky in that regard. But I think other nonprofits that I've talked to that maybe don't have the funding base that we do here at the museum, the same thing is happening. In Chicago, we're seeing that individuals are kind of filling that void that we're losing right now with government.
yeah. I loved what you said about relationships, because relationships aren't built overnight. And it's something that's, I think it's a daily effort. And that's something I think you do well at. There's a book out there called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And I love that title because if you have a need, either as an individual or as an organization, you've got to have the well dug and water available, but that takes time. And
Yeah.
so I think from an individual career standpoint or an organizational standpoint, relationships matter, but it takes years to develop the right kind of relationships. And I liked your emphasis on service. If you're trying to build relationships for my own personal gain, that's not the right approach. It's really how can I help you? And do you have any particular approaches or techniques that you've used to develop relationships in a service mindset that have worked well for you, both personally or professionally in the fundraising world? What kind of hacks, or that's probably not the right word, but what kind of approach or advice would you have for someone in building relationships on a personal level?
Well, good question. I think it's more than anything, it's being respectful and really being sincere about wanting to know more about these people. If you find yourself talking more than the other person, you should probably hold back and listen more. But I think being inquisitive, right, and curious about who they are and where they're coming from. Also, be developing though, and that doesn't mean they have to become your best friend, right? But it's just checking in, remembering names. I think another really important thing that I learned early on is don't burn a bridge, right? Don't ever um, put your personal feelings or something that you may have heard, or if somebody has, you know, done something that you don't like, just don't burn that bridge, because I've had so many instances where, people that I knew when I was at Columbia College 15, 20 years ago are now helping me, and I have a connection and I could pick up the phone and call them. And even though we weren't necessarily really close, we worked together, um, or we, worked on a project together. And as you get older, you find that those kinds of relationships and those connections can really become very helpful. And
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Um, Before we get to this next topic, I want to do a quick snap poll. I want to talk about AI in the arts because that's kind of a hot topic as well. How many of you would pay to see a movie completely generated by AI? Like go to the theater, pay $12 to see a movie completely generated. Will you put in the chat yes or no? I noticed that Tilly Norwood is, I guess they're making a full-length feature with her. This is so interesting.
yeah.
Everyone's no.
And the Odyssey, which is opening this weekend, wasn't it done with a lot of AI?
I think he stayed away from I mean CGI. I think he stayed away from CGI,
Okay.
but I don't know about AI. This is someone said if it's dinosaurs, I'm down. I I think yeah, there would have to be something there with that, but most people are no. It's a false premise. Nothing is done completely by AI.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So it sounds like, and in fact, I think most of the people on here are probably under 30, but they're not. Few people are curious. I'm surprised by that response. Tell us how you see AI impacting the general creative process from a business perspective.
Well, yeah, for me, I think it's here to stay, right? And I think it has some useful applications. In the arts, and I'm sure all of you, because it got a lot of the whole Timothy Chalamet comment that went viral on social media about, oh, ballet and opera, who cares about those things, right? The reality is that AI is going to have a much more difficult time to replicate the performing arts, um, more so than like what Timothy Chalamet does on screen, right? So I think that there is always going to be a need for creativity and the arts in our life. Um, where it's headed, I don't know, but I think that not embracing it in some capacity, like we use it a little bit here at the museum now. for things. And I know that the Theodore Roosevelt Museum just opened, and they have a whole AI generated, you can have a conversation with a young Teddy Roosevelt and ask him questions. And it's all so in that regard, I think that there's learning and there's other things that can be helpful to certainly in the museum world. I would love to, I wish we had the money to do some of those kinds of things here at the History Museum where someone could have a conversation with Lincoln or other historical figures. But I don't like the idea that it's taking people's jobs, and that artists are being replaced by that. And I'm an optimist that think that they'll never really be able to fully replace, the painter or the singer, the dancer, and those kinds of skills, which are take a lifetime to.
Yeah. So how do you use AI in your day-to-day job?
Mostly for me, and I know our CFO uses it a lot more than I do, but I'll use it. Here's a real world example from yesterday and today. So Chicago's been hit with this smoke coming from Canada, and yesterday was the worst air quality, and you couldn't see, 50 feet from out your window. And as the CEO of the museum, I needed to get an all staff email out to everybody, letting them know, we're not going to close the museum because it can be a safe haven for people that don't have a place to go, but you should stay indoors. Here's the recommendation. There was just a lot of information. So I threw that all into ChatGPT and I said, will you just get me an all staff email that I can get out really quickly? And, within seconds, I had my message that I could send out to everybody and the emails that they needed to. And I had to recreate one this morning because the smoke is still here, but to let them know that, the museum would be open, but if people wanted to work from home, they could. So that's a very practical way, very kind of mundane, but it did help me get that out a lot quicker. The CFO uses it a lot more for analysis. Here's our budgeting. How does this compare to other museums? We're also in union negotiations right now with our staff. We're doing a collective bargaining agreement, and we can throw into AI, how does this compare? What they're asking for with other museums and where they've landed with their collective bargaining agreement. So those kinds of things and doing quick analysis and research have been helpful for us, but we haven't used it at all kind of in the educational or the exhibition realm yet.
Do you think you will?
Possibly. Like I'm very interested and I'd love to go to this. The only place I know of currently that is kind of has this AI exhibition is at the Theodore Roosevelt Museum. The Obama Center just opened here. They're not using any AI in that. They're using a lot of technology, but no AI. And I don't know really of any other, I haven't heard of any local museums that are using AI yet, but it's coming. I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah. So you're in a city that is replete with great museums, the Art Institute, the Obama Center that just opened.
Yeah.
How do you compete? I'm assuming you feel like you have to compete for people's attention in a very competitive space. How do you set the Chicago History Museum apart, or how do you attract visitors with all those other
Yeah.
impressive museums in your city?
Well, for us, it's all about Chicago, right? So we're ground zero for anything that has to do with Chicago, and hopefully the destination for anybody that wants to learn about our history. And Chicago, of course, is a very popular city, has a lot of very iconic food, sports, our our Chicago flag, which I never knew that a city flag was such a thing or a big deal until I got to Chicago. But there's 4 stars on the Chicago flag, and each of those 4 stars represent important moments in history for Chicago. So kind of being the destination for all things Chicago kind of gives us a precedent. And we've been like I said, we've been collecting and preserving and sharing Chicago stories for 170 years. So we're a destination, I think, for anybody that wants to learn more about Chicago. So that's what sets us apart.
Yeah. Do you see any big changes coming down the pipeline for for history museums in general?
Oh yeah, and they've already been happening. I think over the last 5 years, the importance of telling both sides of his or a more complete story around history is really, really important. And we see those battles happening at the national level as well with the kind of the attacks on the Smithsonian and other things. But we have an exhibition here at the museum that's called Crossroads to America. And it kind of talks about Chicago's history and how, the railroad and everything, Chicago Midwest. And that exhibition was done 20 years ago. And the narrative around that exhibition is so outdated that we got a grant for kind of broadening the narratives. And, it's important that if you're going to talk about all of kind of this industrial progress and all of the things that we say are great things that, Chicago has contributed to the nation. There's also a story of displacing indigenous people and communities within Chicago that were marginalized with the freeway that ran through neighborhoods and broke up neighborhoods and things that we see as progress were to some people it wasn't really progress. And museums have not typically talked about those other things that are sometimes seen as not as important or negative things, and we only want to talk about good things about history and progress and moving us forward or things that made us better. But there's always another side of a story. And so museums, especially history museums, are really leaning into the fact that we have to tell both sides of those stories. And the Obama Center, I think, is a recent example. I was just there kind of during their previews a month ago. And kind of as you enter the museum, there's a copy of the Declaration of Independence, and it talks about the birth of a nation and the promises made and the aspirations of this new nation and how we're still working as a democracy to live up to those expectations. But it also, right next to it, had a narrative and labels about the indigenous people that were displaced as we formed this new nation. And I think you have to be able to tell both sides of that story. And it doesn't say, it doesn't mean one's bad, one's good, it's part of history. And it's important to tell both sides of those narratives.
Yeah, it's been interesting with the national parks how there's been political pressure to change the narratives. There's been some lawsuits. Have
Yeah.
you had any pressure to change any narratives at the museum?
Um, a little bit and no. I mean, I think we're fortunate to live in a city that is fairly progressive, but my donor base at the museum tends to be more upper class, white, business owners, those typical, founding fathers that, were the titans of industry. And so as we've tried to move to be more inclusive of all of Chicago, the South and West sides, which are typically more Black and brown communities, we have had people, this word woke, your woke agenda, and you're trying to, you don't care about America or Chicago, these kinds of things, and people, have left, they're no longer a member, but those to me are people just, and they're welcome to have their own opinions. But corporations, foundations, generally speaking, we don't have any pressure to change. I guess the biggest pressure we had was kind of the elimination of the NEA or the NEH and some of these federal funding organizations that weren't going to fund anything that really didn't tell one side of history.
Yeah.
But even then, we're committed to, our mission, and so far our donor base is meeting with us.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Before I've got a couple more questions, but I want to let the audience, we've got a great audience here. Stacy wrote in, she said, I love the emphasis on sharing multiple perspectives of history. Side note, she'll be in Chicago in October and will definitely be visiting the Obama Center and your museum. So
great.
you just got a new fan.
Yeah, well, please, when you get to the museum, let them know at the front desk that an SUU alum is downstairs, and I'll come down and say hi.
Okay, that'll be great. Um, put in your questions. I'm curious. We talked about this in our previous call, but what if a young SUU student came to you and said, "Look, I'm a gifted performer, or I'm a talented artist, or I want to work in the arts, uh, and I would love your career advice." What would you advise someone that's in their 20s, they're studying art or theater or something in that realm? What would you advise them in terms of how they manage their career?
I would say go for whatever, live your passion. As you get older, it's harder. So for me, like if you're a dan do everything you can. Take your classes, do your auditions. If you're an actor, pursue that artistic passion that you have, but also know that you've also got to make a living, and that you might need to do something else on the side. This is kind of part of that reinvention, or following the path. You've still got to have money to live, and you still got to do those things to pay your bills. But don't give up on your art. And I think lifelong learning, SUU, motto can apply here, right? Continue to stay connected to your art form. I still am connected to dance. I get involved with a Nutcracker performance every year. But I've moved on also, and I know that I have to have a career. But someone very wise told me, and this applies. When I left dance, like it's like a change of a career and a death in a way, right? It's like, oh, I'm never going to be able to have this kind of experience. And they looked me straight in the eye and they said, you'll never not be a dancer. You'll always be a dancer. You'll just have to it'll have to manifest its way in a different way. Meaning that the spirit of the artist, the spirit of the dancer will always live within you, but you might have to take another career path. But I can still go to a dance performance and enjoy it and love it and remember and keep up with what's happening in that field. I can still enjoy theater. I can still go to a play, but you know, I can be a patron instead of a practicing artist.
Yeah, so true. I remember when I was in high school, I took piano lessons from Evelyn Jones, and I was playing football at the time, and I was not practicing because football was interfering. And she said, "Can I tell you something? You'll be playing the piano a lot longer than you'll be playing football." And she was absolutely right. I still play the piano, but I haven't touched football for a long time. So,
Yeah, that's
hey,
right.
we have a question come through. This is from Jonathan. He says, my daughter was really interested in the drama tech set side of things, but gave it up because she said that the industry was too narrow, too difficult to make a career possible. What do you advise? What do you say to that?
Um, in so in perform like tech,
Drama set, the set, the text that set up the play.
oh yeah,
Uh,
like the production crew
there
and
you go. That's right.
building, yeah, all those kinds of things. I I don't know. To me, those kinds of careers are so there's more than just theater, right? So set building, so knowing architecture, knowing history, there's costume design, there's production, there's sound, there's so many things, and you don't need to do it just for theater. Those skills also for the movies, for corporate settings. I have buddies that were in carpentry and in electrician and sound at the Joffrey, and now they're working for big companies that do corporate events. And so again, kind of looking outside of just that kind of maybe that narrow picture. Well, I may not be able to do it for the theater, but if I really love this, there's a lot of, and I know people also that jump from a theater gig to a corporate gig to other things they can work kind of as freelance. And I know that's not for everybody, but there's a lot of opportunity out there, I think, in those careers, at least people that I know.
Yeah. I think what you said about reinvention, like what are those transferable skills? Yeah, because you could go from set design to architecture or set design to corporate events. You're setting up a stage, you're creating an ambiance or an atmosphere. So I think those transferable skills, I think you just ask AI, what if I do this, what can I transfer into? And you'll get
Yeah,
and talking to people like you, I think would be really
sure.
helpful. Someone wrote in and said, tell her to become a high school technical director in Texas. They're wildly sought after. So some people have put in here, yeah, they might be surprised that she could land with Disney theme parks. So I think you just have to look for related industries where there's demand. So
Yeah.
anyway, so thanks for everyone who's shared their advice there. Well, Michael, I think we're about out of time. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your expertise.
Really
Would
enjoyed
you
it.
would you be okay if people connected with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine.
Okay. I will tell you my best piece of advice is if you think you want to make a career in the arts, schedule 15 minutes with Michael and just pick his brain. Not only does he know a lot of people, but he knows a lot of things too. Um, So if you're okay with that, find Michael Anderson at the Chicago History Museum on LinkedIn, and try and schedule 15 minutes, and it would be worth it. You'll be digging your well before you're thirsty if you do. I promise. So, all right. Well, Michael, hopefully you come back for homecoming this year. If you do, let us know. We'd like to get together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I enjoy coming back to SU any chance I get.
Okay. Next week we're off because it's the July 24th, and that's the bonus of living in Utah. We get the day off. In 2 weeks, we are going to be meeting with Cassandra Toscano, who's a healthcare consultant, a Yale grad who lives in on the East Coast. We're going to learn about healthcare consulting. So join us in 2 weeks at noon to learn about healthcare consulting if you're interested in that. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great weekend. See you, Michael.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.